Well, I thank you, Liana, and thank you for everybody for attending. We do have a small group, so let's just keep it interactive and casual. I wish I could do this presentation for you in French, but as I mentioned earlier, my French isn't good enough. I'm sorry. I'm Robin Valaitem. I'm Senior Director of Applications with Peoplesoft, and I'm very happy to be able to talk to you about some of the updates and roadmaps that are happening for Peoplesoft. I appreciate you all being a user group. We have many user groups, as well as in the worldwide, and it really keeps the Peoplesoft brand alive. It helps us when we try to communicate new changes and updates like this. Instead of trying to talk to each individual customer, it's great to be able to have user groups like you to be able to present to at one time. So thank you for everything you do to keep the focus that your user group alive and keeping a consistent regular meeting like you do. I will be talking about some updates. My plan is just to give you an idea of what's coming, what we are investing in as a Peoplesoft line for HCM specifically. We'll also touch a little bit about what we're doing in the people tools area, because that impacts our applications, and then answer any of your questions. So I'll first start with some announcements, which you may have already heard. We made some of these announcements earlier this year as a result of what's been going on with COVID. The last thing we wanted to do was to have our customers worry about things that were starting to be on de-support, right? And having to focus on trying to get current when there's so many other more important things to worry about. So we've made some announcements that I show you there. I think the most important one is most likely the second one listed there, which is move de-support date for classic pages from December 2020 to December 2021. I know that probably most of you on this call are running Fluid in your environment. If you are, you may know that once we deliver a Fluid component that replaces a classic component, the support for the classic component stops after about 2.5 years or so. So what we do is we list out when we deliver those pages, and then we put we de-support those pages within 2.5 to 3 years of the Fluid page being made available. Well, there were some pages that were about to be de-supported as of the end of this month. We pushed that out to next year. This likely does not apply to most of you on the call. Maybe it does, but if you have any specific questions about specific Fluid pages and their counterparts in Classic, and you're wondering if the Classic version is being de-supported, you can always let me know. I'll be happy to show you where that is on peoplesoftinfo.com. When I say de-support, what that really means is the page will still stay in the database. You can still use it. It's just that if you run into a bug or an error on that Classic page and the Fluid page has already been available for 2.5 years, we're not going to go back and fix it on the Classic page. We'll only fix it in the Fluid page, because at some point we don't have the capacity to support both versions of the same page. Okay. I have some resources listed below that are really good. Peoplesoftinfo.com is where you can go to see all the pages that have been delivered in Fluid for all the applications and when they were delivered and which page they replace. The blogs, .oracle.com/Peoplesoft, that's a really good place for you to learn about the latest updates that have been happening with Peoplesoft, particularly as it relates to COVID and related to the state changes. And you already know that. You may also know that we released image 36. So customers are starting to take full advantage of that. That was released November 3rd. There's a number of big features available that that should interest you, particularly the first one listed there, which is Fluid and modernization of job data. I'll show you a little bit about what that is, but that's a very highly impactful feature. I do recommend you take a look at that. because it impacts your power users, your administrators who go into PeopleSoft every day and make job action changes. We've completely changed that, and we've changed it for the better, because now, as you will see in the demo I show you, you'll be able to make changes in job data using Fluid, using the activity guide, using drop zones, and using page and field configurator, so you can limit the fields that the user sees when they enter a transaction. So it's really, really good stuff. If anybody sees anything on this list that interests them, I can certainly cover it. I don't plan on covering it all because we wouldn't have enough time, but there is a highlights video available. If you go to the Oracle PeopleSoft YouTube channel, you will see a highlights video called PeopleSoft HCM Image 36, and it has a little video on all of these features that I show you here. Okay. Some of the things that customers have reached out to us this year, this crazy year of 2020, to see what PeopleSoft can do to help them during the pandemic. These are just some of the areas that customers have started to use. Some of these features have been in PeopleSoft for a very long time, like mass updates and remote worker, and some are newer, like delegations and onboarding, offboarding. Some of the things that we've had to do in terms of changes have been around legislative updates, with country legislative updates, and in the US we had a number of updates too for regulatory and legislative changes, particularly for tax updates. So it's been a very eventful year, but it was good to be able to leverage some functionality within PeopleSoft that already existed to help customers. And then they were asking for more, including, for example, health and safety. We just delivered a new version of health and safety to help customers track incidences, illnesses, and exposures. Obviously, customers would use that for COVID tracking as well. It doesn't do the complete contact tracing and all the other things that I know that customers are starting to do, but it does give you the ability to enter incidences of when it is discovered. So that's something that's available new in PeopleSoft. So for the rest of the session, I like to break it up into 4 main areas. These are the 4 basic or common questions I get from PeopleSoft, and I'm sure that that you have some of the same questions. So I've organized the roadmap session here in these 4 categories, because I think it'll help us go through it a little bit easier, but then also address these questions, because I'm sure you all have these questions too, which is, what's Oracle's commitment to PeopleSoft? What is the roadmap for PeopleSoft? There's a lot of talk about cloud. How does that impact me as a PeopleSoft customer, or does it even impact me as a PeopleSoft customer? And then what would be next after everything we talk about today? So first, about the commitment to PeopleSoft, you should know that we have a published support policy. It's available on oracle.com. It's also available on the blog page that I mentioned earlier. We have no plans to stop investing or supporting PeopleSoft, even though some other competitors may say that. That is not the case. We are continuing to invest in PeopleSoft. We will support PeopleSoft. We will provide premier support through at least 2031. But what's more important than that is that our leadership has committed to a rolling 10-year support policy for PeopleSoft. And what that means is that if at any point in the future, Oracle decides that from a business perspective, it does make sense to end premier support for PeopleSoft customers, we will give all of our customers and our partners and the entire PeopleSoft ecosystem a minimum of a 10-year heads up that will happen. So what that means effectively is that all of our customers and anybody related to PeopleSoft will have a minimum of 10 years to determine what they're going to do next with PeopleSoft. And I can tell you because my role is I work with PeopleSoft customers every single day. And I can tell you that even if a decision like that was made, many of them would still stay on PeopleSoft. And they would just support and develop and enhance their own product. Others would possibly move to the Oracle Cloud applications, I'm sure. But that's, that just is something that happens if and when a decision like that is made. But I think for the most part, it's important to know that Oracle is committed to PeopleSoft for at least until 2031 and beyond. And given the size of the customers that we have and the number of customers that we have, the business decision makes perfect sense to continue to invest. And one of those reasons is not only do we have a large install base of customers, we have customers around the world. We also have a dedicated team here at Oracle that's dedicated to developing and advancing and supporting PeopleSoft. We have ongoing investment, which I'll show you some roadmap items in a minute. We do regular updates. As you know, we have 5 releases a year for HCM. We have about 1 release a year for ELM and 1 for HR Help Desk. We have People Tools releases about once every, 15 months or so. We have a high adoption. I just saw the latest numbers that we have close to 90% of our customers on 9.2. So there's a few out there that are not on 9.2 yet. You may be one of them. But the vast majority of our customers have made the move to 9.2. And I know of many who are planning on going to 9.2. In fact, they were going to go to 9.2 this year, but because of the pandemic, decided to push it out to next year. We also have a high adoption of Fluid. The vast majority of our customers are running Fluid, which is very important because without Fluid, your PeopleSoft application will look old and dated and not competitive with what's expected from your users in today's world. And we do have a published roadmap on peoplesoftinfo.com. We don't call it roadmap, we call it planned features and enhancements. And a little later, I can show you how to navigate to that. But that shows you a list of all the features that we plan on doing over the next 18 months. Every 6 months, we do a checkpoint to reevaluate what we have on the roadmap and see if there's anything new that we need to add. So so if there's something that you think that we're doing or should be working on, and I don't cover it today, that's because it's on our published roadmap, and we only have limited time. So I try to cover the high value items first, and then allow you to go to the published roadmap to see the individual things. So for today's PeopleSoft, as I mentioned, most people are on 9.2, most people are on Fluid. This is what your environment should look like if you're part of that majority of PeopleSoft customers. You have a Fluid dashboard, you have a Fluid homepage like I'm showing you here for manager self-service. You're using all the functionality that's available in PeopleSoft. You're using the personalizations options. You're allowing your users to access PeopleSoft via a mobile device, like I'm showing you here with an iPad or a smartphone. Not everything needs to be done over a mobile device, but the capability is there if you're running Fluid. You're selectively adopting new features and getting current at least once a year with your application, right? What customers are also doing now is taking advantage of something called Cabana Analytics, which has just been made available. And I'll review that in a minute with you, as well as Chatbot functionality, which allows employees to use the chat interface to get information and kick off transactions in PeopleSoft. Those are 2 relatively new things that have been available for customers that they're starting to look at. And then the other thing that customers are looking at is how can I leverage the cloud without actually changing my applications? And we've seen a number of customers now take their PeopleSoft instance, and instead of running it on premise, they move it to OCI, the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, run the same PeopleSoft that you have today, the same customizations that you have, everything. It's just that now we take it and we put it in the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which makes it a lot easier to instantiate new environments, new databases, and use the virtual machines that are available with OCI. So hopefully your PeopleSoft has some, if not some or many of the components that I'm showing you here on the screen today. So what are we investing in from a PeopleSoft perspective? The 4 items that you see listed there is an investment strategy that we have overall for all of our applications, including our People Tools technology. So we are continuing to modernize the system to make it user-friendly, to make it competitive with what users expect these days out of their systems that they use. We continue to fluidize components that have not been fluidized yet and that are high traffic areas. And we continue to experiment with new ways of interacting with PeopleSoft, such as through chatbots. Cabana Analytics is another area of investment for us. Kibana is a tool that's available with People Tools that was made available through Elasticsearch. So there's no additional charge or purchase or anything that's involved. All you need to do is get to the right version of People Tools that has the Cabana Analytics tool in it, and then you can use Kibana, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Emerging technologies integration. So I mentioned chatbots. We had to integrate with Oracle Digital Assistant, which is an application that Oracle has that powers the chatbot. But we were able to integrate with PeopleSoft with ODA so that PeopleSoft customers can use chatbots. And we'll continue to do that. If there are other technologies out there that are artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, these are some of the technologies that we would not spend time building inside of PeopleSoft because we already have that technology being built as in other areas of Oracle. So what we do is we look to see how we can integrate with that so that you can take advantage of those technologies if you want to. And then the other area that we're focused on a lot is configurable options. We realize that there's a cost associated with making customizations in PeopleSoft, and we want to minimize the need to do customizations. We can't always deliver what you want right out of the box in the application, but we should be able to deliver configurable options or configurable frameworks that you can use with that can get you where you want to be without having to customize the code line itself. One of the biggest expenses you can have as a team, as a PeopleSoft team, is to customize a page, right? It's very costly every time you go to get current or anytime you go to take on new features that maybe if we've made a change to that same page, it takes, there's a technical debt associated with that. So the more configurable options we can give you, the better. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Also, part of the investment strategy is being able to deliver on the features that and ideas that customers have. So we have an idea space on My Oracle support that customers are giving us ideas for new features. We also have 24, I think now 25 focus groups that customers are a part of, and we get ideas from that to be able to put into the roadmap. There are legislative and regulatory things that come up all the time that we also put that we have to deliver on. So the list is always long. It's just a matter of the responsibility of myself and my team to prioritize and figure out how to make that happen. Okay. So that's the investment that we're looking at overall at a high level. Okay, so let's talk about some roadmap items in particular, which is probably why why I'm here, right? You want to know what are we actually working on. And by the way, I will send this deck to you. So Liliana, I will send the deck to you, and you will all have a copy of this deck, so you don't have to worry about if you miss anything. And some of the slides, like this one, have active links, so you can click on them to get to certain places.
Perfect. Thank you, Robin.
Yeah. I should have mentioned that earlier. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
I show you this slide because it's important to note, even though on the call you're more interested in HCM, and that's my background too. So I'm HCM, but it's important to know that PeopleSoft has a number of other applications. I mean, I don't even have everything listed here, but there's a number of applications that we support and our customers run. Many of our customers, I think over half of our customers, run both HCM and FSCM. And certainly they run People Tools. Everybody does. I don't even have campus solutions listed here. and there's individual products that have their own databases that I don't have listed. But it's important to know that a lot of the technology and some of the investments that I mentioned earlier are across PeopleSoft, not just for HCM. And you'll see, like, we did delegations, right? Delegations is now an enterprise component, so that when your users go in and delegate authority to someone else to do a transaction for them, it's the same user experience, whether they're doing it in HCM to delegate, doing an absence request, or they're in FSCM if they're delegating authority to approve an expense, right? It's the user experience is going to be the same. Kibana goes across multiple applications, notifications, the UI refresh, all of these things go across applications. So I wanted everybody to be aware of that. Image 37 is the image that we're working on right now. We just finished code complete. So we are targeting next month for delivery. That's our target. Here's a list of some of the features that we're expecting to deliver in image 37. Let me pause to see. I don't want to go through this entire list. We certainly will have a video posted once the image is posted where you'll get to see some of these things. Is there anything on this list that anybody on the call would like for me to cover? We could have time maybe to cover one of these items, but I don't want to cover them all. Is there anything in particular that I can go a little bit more into? Anybody interested? I think though the one that's pretty interesting is the text messaging for recruiting. So as you know, the notifications that we have today are work list notifications and email notifications for the most part, right?
Mathieu,
we are now.
Sorry, Robin, I see that he's on mute. Do you want to say something?
Me, Mathieu? No, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Just checking.
Okay. Yeah, please interrupt if you have a question. I'll just keep going until you tell me to stop.
Okay, no problem.
Text messaging is an interesting one. I know it says it's for recruiting, and you're probably not interested in it unless you're running recruiting. But the reason why it's interesting is because this is going to be the first time we offer texting as a mode of notification to users in PeopleSoft. And we're starting with recruiting first because applicants need to be updated with their job applications pretty quickly, right? The younger generation, and maybe many of you are on the call are younger, but texting is more reliable than email these days. So and texting is a lot quicker. So we want to support texting for applications because applicants tend to be those who want those notifications right away. So we're going to introduce it for recruiting, but it's important to note that we are developing a overall plan leveraging tools to be able to support texting for all the applications. But in image 37, we didn't want to wait for that to happen. So we did something to build out for recruiting specifically, but you can expect to see texting as a viable way of notifying across the board in PeopleSoft in probably starting next year. Something that you'll see with 858, I don't know if any of you are on 858 yet tools, but 858 tools has been out for a couple months now. One thing you'll notice with 858 is that there's what we call a UI refresh for Fluid. So Fluid came out about 4 or 5 years ago, and we haven't really done anything since then to refresh the look. And if you notice here, I just give you some subtle examples. Instead of the blue bar at the top of the page, it's now black. There's a little bit more space in between the tiles on the dashboard. We've smoothed out some of the toggle buttons that you see there. There's a little bit more space in some of the pages that are listed out in Fluid. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but it's intended not to be. right? We did not want to do a refresh that was so dramatically different than the original Fluid that users thought they were in a different system, or maybe you would have to go back and retrain your users. We don't want to do that. We wanted the refresh to be subtle, to show that we're keeping up, with the standards of today, and keeping it modern and up to date. Just like your Apple phone or your Android phone, whatever phone you're using, you'll get an update every year or so, right? And you'll notice some subtle differences in the UI of your phone. It's the same approach here. So we expect to do a refresh probably once every other tool's image. That'll be our goal. It may be more frequent than that, but just to give you a heads up, when you get to 858, Fluid will look slightly different. When you get to 859, and that's something we're working on right now, 859 probably scheduled to release the second half of next year. We've done some changes to the navigation because we haven't refreshed the navigation in a while since Fluid came out. So what you'll start to see is, for example, you see on the right-hand side, the notifications. We're going to have all the notifications be available as a right-hand window. So right now in Fluid, you have to click on the little flag, and then the flag opens up a little short window and shows you the last few notifications. And then you have to toggle between them. We're going to have an ability to allow you to see it on the right-hand side of the screen as you're working in Peoplesoft. You can certainly close it, but it'll be available to you because we feel notifications are becoming more and more important. It's the way people kind of think about what they need to do for the day, what's important for them to take action on. So we want to make it a little bit more prevalent for the user. Another thing you'll see is the search, the keyword search. So as you type in the keyword search at the top of the screen, we're going to auto-populate a list of confirmed matches. And the more you type, the shorter this list becomes, right? Because you're going to get closer to matching exactly what you're looking for. Very similar to how you search on YouTube or even in Google, right? But especially YouTube, it looks very similar, operates very similar to that. The more you type, the fewer options there'll be listed there because you're getting closer to what you really want. And we realize that keyword search is an important way of navigating the system because people nowadays prefer keyword search thanks to Google, right? They prefer keyword search instead of navigation. And so we want to make this one of the more powerful ways to navigate Peoplesoft. Another thing you'll see is that we've moved the recently visited and your favorites to the left-hand side of the screen. It used to be on the right, but now we have the notifications there. So this will be available. You see the little icon there, right? That's it won't open up unless you click on that icon. This is your recently visited. This, if you click the little heart, will show you your favorites. The other thing is the nav bar will still be there. And when you open up the nav bar under the menu, now the menu will be, well, under the menu, you'll have breadcrumbs, right? There was always this big discussion when we moved to Fluid and got rid of breadcrumbs. A lot of customers did not like that. People love their breadcrumbs. So we found a way to make the breadcrumbs available here within the nav bar. So in this case, I've navigated from the menu to compensation to base compensation, and these are the plans under there. These are the menu items under there. If I want to, I can click on any of these to go back, one step, two steps, whatever, to get to the navigation. So it maintains my navigation. And I understand why customers like the breadcrumbs, because they could take a snapshot of this and send it to somebody, say, hey, this is how you get there, right? So I totally understand that. The other thing you'll note is, the menu item will now, the menu, the Peoplesoft menu that's available under navbar will be in alphabetical order. You notice this here? It's in alphabetical order. Instead of whatever order we had it in before. I don't even know what it was, but people have just come to remember the order. But I think it's in order of when that menu item was introduced in PeopleSoft, but that doesn't really make much sense to a new user, right? So we're now making it available in alphabetical order. So all of this that I showed you here are prototypes, but this is what we're expecting to be able to deliver with 8.5.9, and 8.5.9 will likely be the release, likely be image 40 for HCM that we release on 8.5.9. Okay, let's talk about Kibana. I mentioned Kibana earlier. So if you're using PeopleSoft, you know that we switched out our search. We went from SES, Secure Enterprise Search, to Elasticsearch. And as a result of Elasticsearch, we used, we're now able to use something called Cabana, which is a front end that Elasticsearch provides that allows us to show you these cool analytics like I'm showing you here. This is actually a delivered Cabana analytic. This is for recruiting, but we've done one for HR. We're doing one for benefits. We're doing one for payroll, global payroll, ELM, absence, time and labor. These are all the ones that are on our roadmap to work on. But just to give you an example of what you can expect, each one of these squares is a Cabana analytic. This entire thing is a Cabana dashboard. Now, if you look at some of these cool things, this is considered, we call this a donut graph, which we don't have available in PeopleSoft without Cabana. Look at the heat map, right? This is a heat map of the US, but you can do a heat map of the entire world. And what this is showing you here is where all of your applicants are coming from. But this could easily be where all your employees stationed, you know, based on their work location. And the color represents how many people are in those states or in those countries. We have a tag cloud. This tag cloud shows me the words that show up the most in people's resumes. We have time series, right? This is over time. Show me all of my applicants, my internal applicants and my external applicants, right? So if you've been using PeopleSoft for a while and you've been trying to do analytics using pivot grids and PS Query, you know that these are all very difficult to do, nearly impossible, right? It's almost impossible to do a time series using PS Query and pivot grids. And pivot grids don't have all of these nice, fancy, they call them visualizations or graphs. We just don't have them, and we've never been able to build those types of things in PeopleSoft. Now they're available. And performance is really good because instead of going back to the database, we're using the search indexes to populate the data. So we found that building out these dashboards and these analytics is much, much faster than it is using pivot grids and PS queries. And there's no additional license or fee. You just have to be on Tools 8.5.8 to be able to take advantage of these. We're delivering a number of these dashboards, but customers are starting to build their own because as long as you have the search index built in Elasticsearch, then it's pretty easy to build out the dashboard. There's a video on Oracle YouTube channel that talks about Kibana. There's also a how to get started section on PeopleSoft info on Kibana if you're interested. Chatbots is another strategic area I mentioned earlier that we're working on. You know, people now can use a chatbot to do a number of different things, or a chat interface, including making orders for food delivery. They can use it to get customer service for a flight that they're taking or a reservation that they're making. I used a chatbot with PayPal to resolve a dispute I had with somebody who I purchased something from and I never got the item. These are all classic ways that people are using chatbots in their real lives. So we were thinking, well, why can't we also allow them to use chatbots in their work lives and be able to interact with PeopleSoft to do so? These types of questions that I'm showing you here on the screen are very simple questions that employees have. And sometimes they don't want to call anybody to find out. And sometimes they don't know where to go in the system to find that information. So what we've discovered is that chatbots are becoming much more prevalent in the world today. Millennials in particular love chatbots. 70% of them have reported a positive experience with chatbot, and businesses are starting to look at how they can leverage chatbots to take care of the routine questions, those common questions that everybody has and takes up a lot of time for some employees to answer. Rather than working on other things, they have to answer some of these basic questions. So what the chatbot does is essentially a rules-based engine. Sometimes they call it artificial intelligence, but it can simulate a conversation using a chat window, and using that conversation can figure out what the user wants, what's the information that they're looking for, and can provide consistent information back to them as a chatbot in the chat window, and then hopefully answer their issue, and then they don't have to call somebody. They don't have to talk to somebody live. They can get their information answered that way. So an example of that, let me just, I would like to show you a quick demo of one that we've delivered already for company directory or employee directory. Employee directory is available to all customers who run HR. So that's why I wanted to show you this as an example. As I'm setting this up, does anybody have any questions they want me to answer?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So as I'm showing you here, I would log in. So just so you know that the way, because we have integrated the Oracle Digital Assistant, which powers the chatbot with Peoplesoft, it's important to know that your users don't have to log in somewhere else to use the chatbot for Peoplesoft. They log into Peoplesoft like they normally would. So I've logged in as an employee, and as you can see, I've come to my employee self-service homepage. I have the employee directory assistant here, right? This is how I'm going to access the chatbot. In future releases, we're going to have a little icon at the bottom right-hand corner that is going to hover over all the pages, so that when I click on that, I can just start my conversation. But for early releases, including the release that's available today, you access the chatbot through a tile, okay? Now, once I do that, I click on Employee Directory Assistant, a chat window pops up, and it says, how can I help, right? And then I'm going to just start interacting with it. Hey, what can you do, right? This is something that maybe somebody would type. Maybe they don't know what this chatbot's all about. The chatbot knows that I'm John Patterson because I've logged in to Peoplesoft and tells me all the things that I can do. So I type in, who is Kathy? And it comes up with Kathy clips, because Kathy and I see Kathy's phone number. If you've got a way to allow them to call that person through internet, you can do that. You can get their email address, and then instantiate the email application they're using. I can view more contact information. So now I can see her address, which I didn't see before. I see her cell number, which I didn't see before. And then I can say, well, which team does Rosanna manage? So in addition to looking up people like I did with Kathy, I can now look up hierarchy and the organization structure. So they've found two Rosanna, right? There's Rosanna Channing and Rosanna White. So it showed me both, but Rosanna Channing is the one I'm interested in, and I'm interested in who reports into her. So there's 8 people that reports into her: Daryl, Vicky, May. I can scroll through that, right? Edmund, and then I ended up finding my own profile because I report into her as well. I can also put in, what is Alex Duncan's phone number? This is something that happens a lot. You meet somebody in your organization, but you don't know their number. So you want to find out what their number is. So I type it in, and then it gives me Alex's business and cell number, right? Specific to what I'm asking, but it also gives me Alex's title, just so I can, in case there's more than one Alex Duncan. What is my business email address? So I just looked up my own email address just as an example to see how easy it is to find basic information on employees. What is Edmund's job title? Again, these are things that people look up, right? I want to know what that person does and who they report into and how to contact them. And very, very simple for the chatbot to figure out what the person wants by just the little chat that they put in. Who is Rosanna's manager? Again, we know that there's 2 Rosannas in the system, right? So, but I'll look at Rosanna, I'll look at the manager details, and now it'll show me Betty Lockerty is Rosanna's manager with all their details there. So a lot of, I think you kind of get the idea, right? Who does Rosanna report to? So those are the types of things that you can do. This, I think employee directory, the reason why I like to show it is because everybody can relate to it. Everybody has it as part of their HR license, but you should know that we have a chatbot for requesting time off using absence management. We have a chatbot now for payroll and global payroll. So you can look up your paycheck, you can look up individual pieces of your deductions, you can look at your pay slip, you can look at your direct deposit information. We have one for benefits. We're coming out with one for recruiting. So there's a number of chatbots that we are investing in to deliver, but also we have customers that are building out their own. So for example, this is a university in the United States that's using chatbots for campus. So their students can log in and see where their classes are, being able to figure out who their advisors are, and just basically answer those basic questions that all students have, right? No sense in having them talk to a live agent because the questions that students have as they're enrolling are pretty much the same, right? You very rarely come across something unique. And if you do, in the chatbot, you can refer them to a phone number that they call, or you could transfer them to an agent that can answer their questions. Honeywell has also used Oracle Digital Assistant, but they've done it more for HCM. And so in this case is being able to have information for employee self-service and leave and benefits and payroll information. These are the basic things that employees typically ask about, especially this time of year, right? For managers, they're providing chatbot information for processes for approvals, performance management, and self-service transactions. So the idea here is to give the user what they want, which is a fast interaction to get their answers right away. And by the way, the users want a consistent answer. And with a chatbot, you're guaranteed to give a consistent answer. Whereas if I call my company and ask my question, I may get a different answer depending upon who I talk to, right? But in this case, the chatbot has one answer per question, basically, unless it's a dynamic question, and it will always be consistent. And it's always on. You can always access it 24/7. So the prerequisites for chatbot, you have to be at least on tools 85707 or higher. And then the application release you can see there. That is in order to get that integration that we built out between PeopleSoft, the application, People Tools, and ODA. You would also need to license ODA. So I realize that this is likely going to be a decision you need to share amongst your organization to figure out if you would do that. But ODA does have a couple different options, including either licensing it by number of employees, or you can pay what they call universal credits based on the number of transactions you plan on having throughout the year. So there's some flexibility there. It's pretty simple to get started with chatbots. You have to license ODA, that's step one. Obviously get to tools, to the different versions of tools and applications, as I mentioned. You download the chatbots that we have delivered, or you create your own, or both. And then you just configure the integration in PeopleSoft so that it works the way you want it to work with ODA, and then you're off and running. That integration that we built out with ODA is it basically allows you to have a user authentication so that when I log in and when I call up the chatbot, it already knows who I am. That's the user experience you want. You don't want them to have to re-log in, right? That handshake between PeopleSoft and ODA happens with this integration. You also would use the templates delivered in the integration to build out new chatbots so that you have consistency across your chatbots and how they behave. So, and then you would also use the integration framework if you wanted to brand the chatbot. Maybe you want to give it a name. Maybe you want to have it in the colors and have an avatar that represents your organization. The check marks represent the chatbots that we've already made available to customers. The other items are ones that we're looking at building out as part of our roadmap. So you'll see that we're pretty committed to Chatbot. We feel that this is going to be the next new wave of how employees and managers are expecting to interact with their system. So some of the things on the HCM side that we're looking at for our roadmap. So we've kind of talked about a lot of the things that are that we've done already that are available for customers. If you're looking at what are the big ticket items that we're working on next year, since we modernized job data, we're now going to modernize person data. That's the other tab, right? That's part of that module. So we're going to modernize that. We're delivering more chatbots, as I mentioned. We are modernizing e-performance so that it's a little bit more in tune with what customers are doing today for their performance management. We're going to deliver more Cabana Analytics. We're a firm believer in the value of Cabana and that customers will absolutely love using it and give access to people, to Peoplesoft that maybe they hadn't done before to this analytical data. I mentioned texting. We're going to have a manager self-service component for health and safety. Right now, only an employee can go in and enter an incident in health and safety. Later, we're going to deliver a feature where the manager can go in and enter an incident on behalf of an employee. The Pay Me Now feature for payroll is something that we're looking at. This is a big feature, but with the gig economy, we have a number of people in our work population who want to get paid when they're done with a project. They don't want to have to wait until the payroll cycle happens, which could be bi-weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly, or what have you. They want to get paid the moment they're done, right? Think of like Uber drivers and Lyft drivers and other types of project-based people that get paid the moment that the transaction, the work is done. There are more and more employees, particularly the younger generation, that do expect to get paid this way. And we feel that organizations need to adapt and be able to support hiring people in this way. And if you hire people this way to do project-based work, you got to be able to pay them that way as well, right? So this is something that we're looking at to be able to support with payroll. And then lastly listed there is additional non-binary gender values. So right now in Peoplesoft as delivered, we only support male or female as the gender reported value in the system to identify, you know, the sex of the employee. We are looking at supporting more values than that. So because we realize that there's more than just male and female. And the thing is that it sounds easy to do. You know, we could just go in, update the translate value and just add another value, but it's all of the downstream implications of reporting and other actions that are based upon the value that's there. There's also other entities that don't accept values other than male and female. So what do we do in that instance? So we're looking through that, but we're committed to trying to deliver something next year that supports the non-binary gender value. For global payroll, because I'm assuming there's a few of you on the call that are running global payroll specifically. We mentioned the chatbot that's available now. It's available for GP Core and GP UK. We're going to start, you could use the template that's delivered for GP Core to configure it so that it works for the country that you're working with. So that's available now. And as time goes on, we may decide to deliver some of those specific GP countries for global payroll chatbot, but it's likely that it's faster for you just to probably use the configuration that's available in GP Core today with what was made available in Image 36. We are looking at building a Cabana Dashboard specifically for global payroll, so you can do better analysis of your payroll distribution, be able to find trends and the values of all those payroll runs that you run to see if there's any anomalies. So we're working on that. Automated creation of calendaring, which will be available in Absence as well as global payroll, particularly for off-cycle groups. And a component lockdown feature, which is something that I know customers have been interested in. It's something that's available on the payroll for North America side. We can't quite use that same code in global payroll because it's a different way of doing things, but the concept is still the same, allowing you to lock down any components that would pull up or use your global payroll engine during times of processing, right? So
Robin?
maybe, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have a question already for several minutes on our chat. Can I address it to you?
Yeah, sure, sure.
It's from Laurent Toussaint. Merci pour votre question. So the question it is, if we know in which image version the modernization of e-performance is expected.
Yes, I don't know yet. We are working on it. It's most likely going to be the middle of next year at the earliest.
Sorry, you can continue, Robin.
Okay, yeah. So because there's a lot of work involved in that, but I think it will most likely be the earliest would be the summer of next year, most likely towards the fall of next year.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the best I can tell you.
Thank you.
At this point. Yeah. And speaking of which, that's perfect timing. Thank you for that question. So what we're looking at doing, a couple things. First of all, we're going to update the user experience. We're going to put it all in Fluid. ePerformance kind of looks like it's in Fluid, but it really isn't. It just was developed that way. We're going to put it in Fluid so that anybody can use any device that they want to interact with it. We're going to make it more action driven, so managers and employees can easily identify what they need to do next. Although it's in an activity guide, work center type setup right now, actually it's technically in a work center, but it looks like an activity guide. So we want to replace that framework that's powering behind it, make it easier for you to make changes and to configure it the way you want to. We want to be able to track conversational type interactions, right? So that's what people are doing these days when they do performance document. People aren't, I mean, we still have a number of customers that do the annual performance review, including ourselves here at Oracle, but customers are starting to move away from that a little bit and start doing more informal, frequent check-ins throughout the year, so that at the end of the year, there's not all this pressure to remember everything that happened all year and write it down and talk about it. So now we're doing more informal, maybe once every 3 months or 2 months checkpoints. So we want the performance review in ePerformance to match that. And then give you a way to store in the performance review any types of kudos, good email, feedback. Maybe someone on your team has told you something great about one of your employees, to be able to store it in the performance document. We want to be able to allow you to do that. And that's why we have to make sure the performance document is open the entire year. So I think maybe for the person who asked about this, if you're looking at deploying ePerformance, I guess, I mean, the question would be, do we wait for this, right? Or do we deploy what we have? I guess it depends on your need. If you need it right away, then I wouldn't wait for this. But if you think that you can afford to wait at least through the summer to get this, then I would wait for this, right? But it just depends on the timing of what you need. Certainly, I would not advise anybody going in and making any type of big changes to ePerformance and customize it, because then, I would rather you use what we deliver. So something to consider. If you want to talk about it more, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And we have an ePerformance focus group. If you're interested, you should probably join that focus group, because they're making decisions based to help us design this new modernized UI. Okay, I mentioned health and safety. Again, you can use Peoplesoft to track incidences that are happening in your organization, anywhere that they happen. It's a new, as you can see here, it's a little bit more modern than it was before. It's for employees to be able to log an incident. They saw an accident happen. There was there was somebody's tripped and fell, somebody got exposed to COVID. I mean, there's a number of different things that you can report. There's approvals baked in so that an incident can be routed to certain people. Your employees can use their phone, right? If they're walking around in a building and they notice that there's some ice in the front of the steps, they can report that on their phone, and then it can get routed to approvals if you want. But then somebody in the health and safety team in your organization can take action, and then you have a report of it, you have a log of it, and then you can do reporting off of it. So that's something that's available today. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a manager self-service part of this coming later on. And that's available to you as an HR feature. You don't have to do anything else, but just configure it and go. You'll also notice with 36, we had the fluid profile search match side-by-side compare. So what the heck is this, right? So hopefully you're using profile management in PeopleSoft, which has been in PeopleSoft since version 9.0, I think. But for those of you who are using it, now you'll have the ability to to be able to compare people's profiles in PeopleSoft side by side, like I'm showing you here, right? The first thing you would do is list out what are the criteria that you're looking for. And usually you're trying to fill a position that's open and you want to find out who's the best match for that job. Or maybe there's a position that you don't have a successor for, a key position you don't have a successor for, and you want to find who would be the best person that I could groom to be the successor for that position. You could have that as your criteria, and then you come to this page and you'll be able to compare all the information that's in profile management for these employees and then decide which one you want to use. So pretty powerful stuff. It's in Fluid. It has all the different search parameters that you would need. At least that's what our focus group told us. And you can move these employees around. You can remove them. You can add new employees, and to do comparison. Very powerful feature for managers and for administrators. As I mentioned, the state of job data and person data, we've now completely redefined what this looks like. It's now an activity guide. This is what it looks like today. Well, this is what it did look like, the old version, or maybe the version that you're running today. But with image 36, it now has an activity guide. It now has approvals. It now has drop zones. We have now integrated it with page and field configurators so that when you enter a transaction, you don't have to have the same experience for all the actions. Let me just show you a quick example of what that looks like. As I do that, if anybody has a question, I'd be happy to answer. Okay, so as I log into PeopleSoft, again, I'm logging in as an administrator at this point. And as I do that, I come into Workforce Administrator, and there's going to be Manage Human Resources. That's the tile that I use, again, as an administrator. I'm going to go to Manage Job, okay? And under Manage Job is where I am going to be able to access job data, right? And again, your administrators, they access job data all the time, right? I mean, they'll probably spend the majority of their time in this component. You'll immediately see that there's a difference. If you have any experience with job data today, you just go straight into the component. But here we got a search page that's a pretty powerful search page. I have all of my saved searches that I've intentionally saved because I do them a lot listed up here. I've got all these new search fields that are available to me, right? And I can configure this if I want to. There's a basic search that just does it one field at a time, or I can use the advanced search, which has a number of fields exposed to me. Most people will use the exposed search. Recent searches. So we will continue to save the recent searches that you've done so that you can search again using them, right? These are very powerful search capabilities. And this entire page is configurable. Everything on this page is configurable, including the fields that you want to show for the search criteria. Pretty powerful stuff. So I'm going to search for somebody that has a supervisor of KUO 0102, and I'm looking for those who are active status, okay? And I want the ability to correct history if we find somebody. So I click search, and now what it does is instead of taking me directly into job data, it first shows me all of the people that fall under this particular supervisor, and then I find the person that I'm looking for. We can't anticipate all the different ways people will want to search, but we do know that having the flexibility to do what you want is important, right? And again, all of this is configurable, including the data that you show on this grid is configurable for that particular, for this particular user. So I like this search. I'm going to save this search because I think I end up having to do a lot with this particular supervisor and his direct reports. I'll name it employees reporting to admin. I click save. And now it shows up in my saved searches. So anytime I want to do that search again, all I have to do is click it there and I'm good to go. So what I'll do is I will, let's see, I see Jason Lee. I'm going to click on Jason Lee. And before I get into job data, it shows me the last few transactions that are either in progress or have been completed for Jason. This is important, especially if you have a shared service center and you have other people that could be taking actions on Jason. I want to see them before I go in and do mine, right? And I have related actions on these transactions too. I can go in and update them if I'm allowed to. I can look at the details, etc. Right? But let's say I'm okay with what's shown here, and I'll just go straight to. I'll just move ahead here. Okay, I'll just go to. I'll create a job action, okay? Because that's what most people do when they come in the job data. You'll notice here that I'll have to put in an action and then a reason. Now, what's important to note here, if you don't remember anything else from today, remember this, that with job data, when I put in action and reason, you can configure the system to show what's next to the user based on the action and the reason. And we did this because not all action and reasons require all the fields to be shown to the user. For example, if I'm doing a data change and I don't know what data I'm going to change, of course I need to see everything because anything could change. But if I'm doing an employee transfer, I don't need to see everything. I only need to see the fields and the steps that are needed for me to transfer an employee. And then there's some fields that I may need to see the data, but I don't need to enter anything. And this is a way to keep it foolproof so nobody makes any mistakes. So in this case, I'm doing a transfer and it's at the employee request. And now what I see, instead of the job data tab, now I see an activity guide. This is a fluid activity guide. I have a couple steps I need to go through. You'll notice that the data is now grouped in a way that makes sense. I think before we had fields that were all over the place, but now we've grouped the data in a way that it makes sense, functional sense to the user. You'll notice some of the fields are grayed out, but I can see the values. That's because we've configured it that way. We said for any transfers, we don't want anybody changing the reg region or the company or the establishment ID, but we want them to see what those values are. You can also mask any data you want based on the action that's being put in. You can hide fields. You can put in default values for certain fields based on the action and reason that's being entered. You can increase or decrease the number of steps that they see, right? But in this case, I'm doing a transfer. I can see this information, the work location information. I can see that it's an employee request transfer at the top of the screen. That's how I know what type of action I'm doing. And I know that I have a few steps I need to enter. So I'm going to go in, or at least review, right? So I'm going to go in, I'm going to make a change. In this case, I need to change the department. And then once I change the department, I need to change the location. So they're going to the accounts payable department. And as I click next, I now am going to the corporation. I got to change their tax code. So I'm going to the headquarters. And that's the thing I need to change for payroll. Notice everything else was grayed out because I don't want anything touched, right, as a transfer. There's now attachments, which we did not have before. So now I can attach a document. Maybe it's a letter or an email that the employee sent in requesting the transfer, or maybe it's some type of supporting document that I want to have on the file for this particular action. Again, we didn't have this before, and now we have it as part of job data modernization. So I attach my file. And then what I do is after I've named the description, I can click next, and then I can validate. Now, this is a key step because we didn't have a chance to do this before. Before I submit this transaction, I validate that the data that I've entered is all within the rules and the parameters set up in Peoplesoft. If there's any errors or warnings, it'll show me before I move forward. Okay, so it shows a couple warnings. I'm not too worried about those. Those are not a big deal. They don't impact really this transaction. And then I hit next, and I see a summary of only the fields that I've changed, right? And then if that looks good, then I'm ready to go. I can hit submit, and then I can submit this transaction, and now approvals are available, which were not available before. So if you want, you can have approvals set up for transfers, for promotions, for any type of action that the admin takes. If you feel like someone else needs to see it before it's approved, you can do that. In this case, we submitted it and we had approvals set up. So the next person above this admin will have to take a look at this transaction. Happens to be listed here in the approvals. And then that person will get notified that, and it's Betty. Betty needs to review this, right? Because she's next in line. One thing that we did not show you here with this demo are drop zones. So drop zones are specialized areas on the page that you can customize without having to treat it as a customization. You can add fields, add text, whatever you want. We have drop zones available on the top and bottom of each one of those steps that I showed you. Okay. So that was kind of a walkthrough of some of the roadmap items, including things that are available today. Shift gears and talk about cloud real quick. Won't spend too much time on this, but it's important to note that cloud impacts Peoplesoft customers as well. Okay, we don't have any plans to make anybody change their system, right? There's no plans to force you to make a move to the cloud application. There's no plans to force you to move your Peoplesoft to OCI. None of that. You can continue to run Peoplesoft on-premise. You can continue to do it the way you want to do it, and we're perfectly fine with that. We want to support you 100%. We have to let you know that cloud in some ways does impact you as a customer, and you should be aware. I'm about awareness, right? So you have to be aware of how cloud can impact you as a Peoplesoft customer. And for pretty much anything I'm about to show you here right now, it's a decision that you need to make. It's not something that you need to do. It's just something you need to be aware. And if you want to take advantage of it, you can. If you don't have to. That's the nature of it. But there's basically three ways cloud impacts you as a customer. Number one is that if you wanted to, again, if you wanted to, you could take your Peoplesoft environment as it is today, all the customizations, all the configurations, everything that you've done, lift it and shift it into the Oracle Cloud infrastructure so that it runs in OCI and instead of running at your data center. And I'll talk about some of the advantages in a minute, but that's one way that you can do that so that you're not using your technical resources to manage Peoplesoft. You use the Oracle Cloud infrastructure to do that. That's one way you can do it. You don't have to, but that's one way. Another way to leverage the cloud is to leverage some of the applications that have been built in the cloud and integrate it with Peoplesoft. Classic example of this is chatbots. We would not be able to leverage chatbots for you in the Peoplesoft environment if it wasn't built already and was enabled as a cloud application. You do not have to run your Peoplesoft in the cloud in order to use cloud applications like Oracle Digital Assistant. You don't have to at all. It just so happens that it's much easier for us to integrate and deploy those applications and integrate with Peoplesoft because they are built and run in the cloud. much easier for us to do that. So a classic example here is Oracle Digital Assistant, which supports the chatbot functionality. There are other things that we do in other areas of PeopleSoft, like we integrated with the Internet of Things, asset monitoring, cloud application with Oracle, with PeopleSoft. And we will continue to evaluate those technologies to see how we can integrate. The third way cloud impacts you is that we've had some customers who have transitioned from PeopleSoft to Oracle Cloud applications. So for example, from PeopleSoft HR to Oracle Cloud HR, or PeopleSoft Payroll to Oracle Cloud Payroll. Those are customers that wanted to make that transition holistically, and they saw something in the Oracle Cloud applications that they liked better than what they were running today, and they made that change. So these are the three ways that cloud can potentially impact you. Let me focus on moving the first one, which was PeopleSoft customers moving their system to OCI. We have about 200 customers that have already done this. And we expect to see a lot more of these customers, join in this year and on into next year. Because it's a pretty valuable, it's a really easy value proposition to explain, right? Because we see that in running it in OCI, OCI was built for our Oracle applications, right? I mean, it supports them. It's a lot cheaper to run your application in Oracle Cloud. We think that it's faster for you typically than it is running on premise, but we would have to show that to you. So you'd have to certainly get one of our tech reps to come and talk to you about that. And it just offloads that responsibility and cost that's associated with maintaining PeopleSoft in your own environment. I think it becomes a very powerful message and a decision if you have not done a hardware refresh in a while. If you've recently done a hardware refresh, it's kind of hard to show the cost benefit of moving your PeopleSoft system to OCI now. But if you haven't done one in a while or due for one, now's the time to take a look at what would the cost difference be and the control difference be between getting a hardware refresh to run PeopleSoft on premise versus just moving your PeopleSoft into OCI. The other benefit that you have to understand here is within PeopleSoft, we've built out this application called Cloud Manager. Cloud Manager is part of the People Tools stack. And you have access to it, you know, as you upgrade your tools, you get access to it. That application enables you in OCI to spin up PeopleSoft environments in a matter of minutes. Like 30 minutes is what I've seen. You press a button, it provisions the virtual application, the database, the server, the web server, everything is provisioned. And in 30 minutes, you could have the latest PeopleSoft PUM image spun up on a virtual environment specifically for you. If you're going to use it for testing, for training, to take screenshots, to, I don't know, just to play around in the application, maybe do a little bit of development or testing of some fixes, you can spin up those environments very easily. And that's the power of moving to OCI. It's not just a potential cost savings, it's also the service that you can get from getting spun up virtual environments. And then those environments are spun back down automatically, right, after a certain amount of time. And those virtual resources can be used for other things. So that's my kind of a summary of what we see customers doing moving to OCI. That third item I had mentioned about leveraging the Oracle Cloud applications, again, there's no requirement to move to those, but we do have customers that are interested in knowing what do those Oracle Cloud applications look like. So I am co-hosting a webinar series specifically for PeopleSoft customers to learn more about the cloud apps. You can see the link there when you get this doc, this link will be active, so you can click on it. That's where you can go to register if you want to attend some of these webinars. We do them once every 2 weeks, and I have a couple subject matter experts join me from the different Oracle groups to explain what life is like running an Oracle Cloud application. Because in some ways it's different than running PeopleSoft, and in some ways it's the same. it's been interesting learning how things are different in those areas. Okay, so what's next? I want to just cover a couple quick things and then see if there's any questions. This is how we get our feedback from our customers. So if you're not part of a focus group or if you're not familiar with the idea space, please do let me know, because I'd love to get you engaged with that. That's where a lot of our ideas come from. We have about 25 focus groups. I'd be surprised if we didn't have one that you would not be interested in, because each major product area and functional area are covered with our focus groups, and we get a chance to talk about new features, what's coming, and the customers help us even design the new features and provide us input in their use cases. We have an innovator program, which I highly recommend if you've done some cool things and creative things with Peoplesoft. We'd love to be able to share your story with other Peoplesoft customers, and that way help broaden your network of Peoplesoft customers. So do let me know if you're interested in participating in that. And we have all the stories of all the cool things that Peoplesoft customers have done with Peoplesoft. You can click on these on peoplesoftinfo.com under the Innovator tab. You'll be able to see their stories, what they did, and maybe even be able to borrow some of their ideas in your environment. And these are all I think the links that you would need. If you don't know about peoplesoftinfo.com, you should start there. And then the second place I recommend is make sure you subscribe to the Oracle Peoplesoft YouTube channel, which is shown here. And then something new that we've done is started a Peoplesoft Chat, where I've had the ability to interview some key people that have been working with Peoplesoft for a very long time, and give them an opportunity to sit down and just talk to me about some of the key things they expect and suggest that customers do with their Peoplesoft environment. So let me go ahead and pause there. I've been talking a long time, but Liliana, let me pause there and then see if with the few minutes we have left, if there's any questions I can answer.
Thank you, Robin. Well, if for the moment there are no questions, I don't know, as I have mentioned at the beginning, I can receive all the questions after, or you can send them to Sabine. We had also the chat open during your presentation, Robin, so you received one of the questions.
I wasn't monitoring the chat, so I
no
didn't.
worries. This is why I was here, and also Ronald helped me to monitor the chat. This is why I'm saying that.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay, good.
We tried to to stay connected. So okay.
And, I will post the presentation on the website, on the Oracle website, and people if they have questions they can ask, and to be honest.
We had Sabine, we didn't hear you very well, but if I catch it, if I catch most of the part of what you said is that you will publish the presentation on user group, Peoplesoft user group, I suppose, if I heard the.
That's it.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Sabine.
Yeah. And I promised to show you real quick about on peoplesoftinfo.com. When you type in that, it'll direct you to this, which is basically a Moss page that we made into a portal. And if you go into applications, HCM, and then here you'll see planned features and enhancements. This is where we have all of the roadmap items, including things that I did not talk about today. So I don't want you to think that this is only the things that we're doing that I talked about. We are doing way more than that. Sorry, I have to enter my PIN, but this is the place where you want to go to see all of your specific features. It won't tell you when we're delivering it. To know that, you either have to talk to me or you have to join the focus group that I mentioned before, and because we tend to talk more about deadlines and targets and all that stuff. But if you come here, you can see this is the list of all the people tools features that we're delivering. This is the HCM features that we're delivering. You see there's a ton of them listed here, right? So it gives you a little description of what we're working on. And if after you read this, if you see something, like I didn't even cover absence management today, but here are some things that we're doing for absence management. So there's a great example right there. But feel free to reach out to me if you see something out here that you want to know a little bit more about. And I can probably give you a general idea of when we're going to get to it, but to know more accurately, you should probably join the focus group for that. And then the other thing I mentioned during the call was Kibana. So if you go to tools and frameworks under analytics, you'll see a Kibana. This is the slide that I showed you. And there's some videos that show you how to get started with Kibana, right? So this is a great place to start. And we have it for chatbots as well, if you're interested in that.
Thank you, Robin, again.
Yes. I will send the deck out to you. And then again, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to answer them either on the phone or over email. No problem.
Perfect, thank you. And I'll forward your presentation to Sabine, and after that, all the participants we had today. So we'll be able to continue if needed. Thank you again, Robin. I know that you have to leave the session. It was really clear, even for me, that I'm not a technical, let's say, person. So thank you also.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Robin. Cheers.
Thank you,
Have a
Robin.
good day.